And welcome back. And as promised today, we start the 5 o'clock hour off with 3rd District Congressman Jim Banks. Congressman Banks, good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey, Pat, good to be with you.
Now, with everything that's going on weather-wise here, off and on rain and ice and all that stuff here in Fort Wayne, and the same thing happening in New York, what's happening to you guys in D.C.? Are you getting a lot of inclement stuff, or is it just the normal doom and gloom of Washington?
A little bit of both. There's snow on the ground, and they expect a big snowstorm tomorrow. Now, when they say a big snowstorm in Washington, D.C., they're talking about 3 or 4 inches, not
right.
a couple of feet like we would talk about in Indiana. So the senators worked through the night last night. They passed the continuing resolution, and the House is going to take that up here shortly, just in the next few minutes.
Okay.
And Pat, I'm disappointed about it. This continues. The CR continues the spending levels from last Congress when Nancy Pelosi was the Speaker of the House. That was well over a year ago. And now for half of the current fiscal year, we're still we have the same spending levels, the same left-wing priorities like the Green New Deal and a lot of the woke policies of the Biden administration that are getting funded on a Republican majority's watch. And I've voted against each of the CRs so far. I'm going to vote against this one today. And I got to tell you, maybe between us, Pat, I'm very disappointed in Speaker Johnson, our new Speaker, who is a conservative, and he knows better, and he's been outspoken here. He and I came into Congress together in 2017, and he chaired the Republican Study Committee before I did. He knows the national debt and spending are a problem. But he didn't push back hard enough on this one, and that's why too many squishy Republicans are going to vote with the Democrats to keep spending at the Pelosi levels from last Congress. I'm not going to go along with it.
Yeah, so you will be a no vote on the CR.
Yeah, if that wasn't clear enough, I'm an absolute no on it, and I'm disappointed in our Republican leadership.
Now, in the CR, the way it's structured this time, let's say the CR didn't pass. I mean, it's going to pass. But let's say it didn't. Would it shut down the military as well as other parts of the government?
No. And one thing that when they passed the CR before the new year, they staggered it. So, and even with the government shutdown, it doesn't shut the military down. It doesn't prevent those basic functions from happening. I'm not for government shutdowns. We should do everything that we can to avoid a government shutdown, but we have a majority in the House which gives us leverage to fight back against big spending that comes out of the Senate. And this is just another case where Republicans have missed that opportunity to use our leverage of the majority. There are some conservatives, myself included, who are pushing back on the Speaker and saying, send the CR back to the Senate, amend it, and put H.R. 2 border security measures into the bill. That's what we should be advocating for. At this point we have a one-seat Republican majority. I get that, and that makes Speaker Johnson's job very challenging and difficult. But we still have the majority. So push back and say to the Senate and say, here's the CR, but with border security measures in it, and force President Biden to veto that or to sign it. I think he would sign it to avoid a government shutdown. Unfortunately, that's not what happened in this case yet again.
What should be done? I mean, I remember times when speakers of the House have brought all of their constituents together in some meeting room there on Capitol Hill, and you hammer out things, whether it's support of this candidate or whether it's this action or that action. Should Speaker Johnson be calling all Republicans into a room and saying, guys, we cannot keep doing this. We just cannot keep doing it. If you do this, if you say no on the CR, I'm the guy that'll stand in the well and I'll stare the Democrats down and dare them and say, if you go ahead with this, fine, but we have no Republican hands on this at all. The blood's on you.
I don't know who Speaker Johnson is getting advice from. I know he's been in contact a lot lately with Speaker Ryan, who was another example of. I haven't been around here very long, Pat, but I've been around here long enough to see 4 different Republican speakers say we're never going to pass a CR again, and then turn around and do exactly that. You had Boehner and then Paul Ryan, and McCarthy did that, and that's what led to his ousting. And now you have Mike Johnson doing Mike Johnson back in December said, we're not going to pass any more CRs, and he's already backtracked on that.
Yep.
And that's deeply disappointing to me and all of the conservatives in the House. There are going to be a lot of us on the Republican side. I don't know yet how many, but I wouldn't be surprised if a majority of the Republicans vote against this CR. And that's bad news for the Speaker, because that's a majority of us that are going against the deal that he struck with the White House. And I'm as you can tell, I'm disappointed about that. We're not going to rein in a $34 trillion national debt if we keep spending at the levels that we were spending under the last Congress, and yet here we are going into over halfway through the fiscal year and doing just that.
I mean, at some point, at some place in this whole narrative that is Congress at its worst and its best, this has to come to an end, doesn't it? I mean, it just absolutely has to come to an end.
Yeah, it's a crisis. We are now at this point spending more on the interest of our national debt than we spend on the budget for the entire Pentagon. I mean, that, to put it into perspective, so you think about that, almost $1 trillion in interest every year on a $32 trillion national debt, Pat. And what could you do with that $1 trillion? You could fund a lot of schools in America. You could fund a lot of infrastructure in America. You could modernize America and invest in priorities that would create good jobs for the next generation and protect the American dream. And yet that's $1 trillion just going to our adversaries like China to pay the interest on the national debt. And I had hoped that when we won the majority over a year ago, back from the Democrats, we knew it would be challenging with a Democrat Senate and Democrat president, but we also knew we would have leverage points, and this is one of those leverage points on a CR, on a spending deal, to stare the president in the eyes and the Democrats in the Senate and say, Republicans in the House and our majority, we're not going to go along with that. And unfortunately, Mike Johnson didn't have the backbone to do that this time, and that's why we're in this position to once again vote against another continuing resolution.
Does he, this is a judgment call on your part, does he really not have the backbone to do it, or did he realize that even if he did have the backbone, that he just doesn't have any support in his own party?
Well, it's a good question, and I don't know if I can answer that at this point. Steve Scalise is getting cancer treatment in Louisiana. Hal Rogers, the dean of the House from Kentucky, was in a car wreck. McCarthy quit at the end of last year.
Yep.
You have another Republican who's leaving the House. I think today is his last day to go be president of a college in Ohio. That gets us down to that one vote margin. So everything is very difficult. Everything is challenging in this environment. But we still have the majority. He's still the speaker. He's the one that decides what comes to the floor and what doesn't. He negotiates with Chuck Schumer and the Senate and the White House. And in this case, I can't believe that we're going down to vote on another CR. It's just it's the exact opposite of what I think the voters gave the Republicans the majority last year to fend off stuff like this. So that part of it is very disappointing.
And that vote is today?
Yes, in just minutes.
I can't tell you how sick I am of hearing this. And I'm not really throwing it at you because I know you're not a yes vote. I'm sick of this under you. I'm sick of this under Marlin. I'm sick of this under Souder. I'm just sick that it seems like that no matter who we send, because we have a great ability to send conservative people from the state of Indiana, but I'm convinced that being a conservative in Indiana is not necessarily the same thing as being conservative in some other states.
Yeah, I think that's true. And also you see a lot of the establishment Republicans, a lot of the Republicans who are on the Appropriations Committee who don't fight back against spending. And I've voted against almost every spending bill that's come through Congress since I've been here because it's wasteful, it's bloated, it doesn't rein in the national debt. And in this case, though, I'm not going to vote in this Congress. I'm not going to vote for any spending bill that doesn't secure the border and reduce wasteful spending and send us on a track to pay down the national debt instead of grow it. And I haven't seen a single example of that. Now I do realize I want to be clear. I do realize the political situation that we're in, a slim Republican majority. We have to win back the White House. We have to have a majority of Republicans in the Senate and keep the majority in the House to actually get to a place where we balance the budget. But in this case, we could have used that leverage to do something with the border. We could have used that leverage to cut wasteful COVID spending that's still on the books, to stop some of the woke spending policies of the Biden administration. And in this case, none of that's happened.
Yeah. Well, and everything that you're saying, that you're not going to vote for it because of this and this and this and this, my assessment to you sounds very much like what came out of your mouth when you were campaigning. Unfortunately, in other states and maybe even in other districts in Indiana, I heard other people saying almost exactly what you did when running for office, and now somehow it has not made its way into being in place when it comes time for them to go for something or not go for something.
Yeah, I can think of a lot of them, maybe even one or two from our own state, Pat.
I know. That
campaigned against wasteful spending, campaigned to balance the budget, and yet they go along with this stuff. And I can't go home to Northeast Indiana, one, and expect to be sent back to Washington if I vote for this kind of garbage. But two, it's just I think about my three daughters and their future, and this really is about the future of our. When we talk about voting to save our country and to protect our kids and our grandkids' future in this great country, we're talking about this. We're talking about the national debt, and I'm not going to go along with growing it.
Yeah. Well, it's got to come to an end somewhere. You and I would have hoped that it would have happened, if not on this vote today, on the last vote before it. But now I'm wondering if it's even possible to have it come, at the next time we have a budget. Now, this is to avoid the shutdown that is looming when? Because we got two back-to-back, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the shutdown would happen over the weekend. So that's why the race is on. The Senate worked through the night last night because they wanted to avoid the, quote, snowstorm in D.C. tomorrow, and the House is voting on it now and instead of voting on it tomorrow.
Yeah.
So to avoid the government shutdown over the weekend. But look, we're staying here to do a serious job, and it doesn't look like our leadership on either side of the aisle is very serious about reining in spending, and that's what's disappointing. I am realistic about it. I know that with Joe Biden in the White House and Chuck Schumer leading the Senate, we're not going to balance the budget overnight, but we could have leveraged this moment to do something to secure our border, which is the biggest issue facing our country, a wide open border. We could have done something to cut wasteful spending, but this actually grows it. Yeah,
no, I think you're exactly right. Congressman, I know you've got a vote coming up, and I know you need to go to it. Just hold your nose and vote no. And let's. I don't know. I really, really don't know. If I were the Speaker of the House, I'm not. I never will be. Not qualified. Don't worry about it. But if I were, I will tell you, I think the next thing that I would do is after the vote today, I would have a meeting with the members of the House tonight. After get them out before the great blizzard comes. But have a meeting tonight and go, guys, listen, I can't do anything if you guys aren't pulled together with me. If you can't pull together with this kind of a stand against spending, then go out to the microphone and tell your constituents that right now, because we've got 10 more months that we can get rid of you and get somebody in there that will make that stand. That's why I'll never be Speaker.
Well, I at the same time, we should be exposing these squishy, go-along-to-get-along Republicans that vote for this kind of spending.
Yep.
I mean, they're just as responsible as the Democrats. So
yep.
Let's expose them and let them know that there will be a hell to pay at the ballot box.
Yeah, I'm not very big, here
spending.
With our program. We're not huge, but whatever reach that this program has, I'm going to start exposing the squishiness tomorrow on the Pat Miller program. Congressman Banks, for your time today, sir. Thank you very, very much. Now get over there and hold your nose and vote.
All right. Thank you, Pat. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Podcasts by Federated Media.